World War II didn't just create tanks and fighter planes, it created weapon ideas so weird they sound made up. First, exploding rats, a sabotage tier weapon, not a battlefield weapon. In simple terms, British SO agents took dead rats, packed them with plastic explosive, stitched them back up, and intended to place them where enemy workers would likely throw them into furnaces or boiler fires. The job was not to kill one soldier directly. The real target was boilers, factory systems, and industrial disruption. That's the key pattern with many weird weapons: small object, huge secondary effect. The limit? They were intercepted before use. But even that had impact, because German forces began searching for more of them, burning time and resources on a threat that barely needed to explode to work psychologically. Next, bat bombs. A firebomb system disguised as a biology experiment. This was an American project, X-Ray, that used a bomb carrier filled with compartments holding hibernating bats, each fitted with a tiny timed incendiary. The idea was simple and horrifying. Drop the casing at dawn, release the bats, let them roost in roofs and attics of wooden Japanese buildings, then ignite hundreds or thousands of fires from inside structures. In the lineup, this sits in the mass incendiary category, but with an animal delivery system instead of conventional bomb spread. It handled one task extremely well on paper, starting many distributed fires. The limits were obvious: control, safety, timing, and military patience. During testing, armed bats accidentally burned part of a US airfield, and the program was canceled before combat use. The trade-off here was insane: potentially devastating fire spread, but huge unpredictability and operational risk. Now, Panjandrum, one of the strangest anti-fortification weapons ever built. Picture two giant rocket-powered wheels connected by an explosive-filled drum, meant to race up a beach and smash into concrete defenses. In modern terms, it was a breaching charge with wheels and rockets. In the lineup, this was a high-power assault engineering weapon meant for invasion beaches like the Atlantic Wall. It handled one job, making a hole big enough for men and tanks. Its limit was fatal. It could barely move in a straight line. Tests were chaotic, rockets came loose, and the thing became more dangerous to observers than to enemy bunkers. The trade-off was massive explosive force versus almost no control. Great concept for paper. Disaster and trials. Then there's Germany's Goliath tracked mine, which looks like a miniature tank, but works more like a disposable remote bomb. It was a small demolition vehicle guided by a joystick through a long cable, carrying a heavy explosive charge to tanks, bunkers, or barricades. In the lineup, this is the closest we gets to a proto-ground drone. It did one thing well: precision delivery of explosives without exposing the operator directly. The limits were brutal: slow speed, thin armor, poor mobility, and that vulnerable control cable, which could be cut by gunfire or shelling. Germany built thousands, but battlefield results were mixed. This is a perfect weird weapon lesson. Being ahead of your time doesn't matter if the technology is too fragile for combat conditions. Next, Fugo balloon bombs from Japan, the first intercontinental weapon system in practice. These were large hydrogen balloons carrying incendiary and anti-personnel bombs, launched from Japan and carried by jet stream winds toward North America. In simple words, long-range bombing by weather. In the lineup, this was strategic harassment and terror warfare, not precision attack. What did it handle well? Range. It reached another continent without ships or aircraft. What were the limits? No guidance, weather dependence, and inconsistent results. Japan launched thousands, only a fraction arrived, and most caused little damage. But one explosion in Oregon killed 6 civilians, proving that even low-accuracy weapons can still be deadly. The trade-off was cheap long-range reach versus almost zero control. Now the darkest one: anti-tank dogs used by the Soviet Union. These were dogs trained to run under tanks with explosives attached, detonating the charge against the vulnerable underside. In the lineup, this was an emergency anti-armor solution born from desperation. It could work, and there are documented cases of tanks being damaged or destroyed. But the limits were horrifying and practical: battlefield noise, confusion, training flaws, and dogs returning toward Soviet lines. There are large Soviet-era claims about tank kills, but historians treat many totals with caution. The real takeaway is not this was effective or ineffective in a simple way, it's that it was a brutal stopgap method that revealed how desperate anti-tank warfare became in the early Eastern Front. Now for a very different kind of weird: pigeon-guided missiles, Project Pigeon, later Orkan. This was an American guidance concept in which trained pigeons sat in compartments in a missile nose cone and pecked at the image of the target. Their pecks would help steer the weapon. In simple words, biological target tracking. In the lineup, this belongs to precision guidance research, not mass destruction itself. Its strength was the idea of solving a real Wu-Wei problem, how to guide a bomb accurately before modern electronics matured. The limit was military confidence. Even though the concept was technically demonstrated, officials never fully trusted it, and radar/electronic systems won the race. The trade-off was surprisingly clever low-tech guidance versus credibility and scalability. Next is Britain's sticky bomb, No. 74 grenade, a close-range anti-tank grenade built when Britain urgently needed anti-armor options. It used a glass sphere filled with explosive, coated in adhesive, inside a casing. You removed the cover, stuck it to a tank, and the fuse detonated it after a short delay. In the lineup, this is an entry to mid-tier anti-tank weapon for infantry and home guard. Cheap, mass-produced, and simple in theory. It could handle lightly armored targets and emergency defense situations. Its limits were obvious and terrifying. You had to get dangerously close. The grenade could fail to stick properly, and the design itself was awkward under stress. Still, millions were produced, which tells you how urgent the anti-tank shortage was. The trade-off was availability over elegance. Another British oddity, the poison dart bomb concept, a proposed cluster-style weapon that would disperse huge numbers of tiny toxin-filled darts. In simple terms, imagine a bomb designed not to rely on blast radius, but on a cloud of miniature poison needles. In the lineup, this was a chemical/biological adjacent mass casualty concept being explored in secret wartime research. Its theoretical advantage was efficiency, tiny doses, many victims. Its real limits were cost, delivery reliability, and practicality against troops with cover, vehicles, or buildings. It never became an operational weapon. This is one of those projects that matters less for battlefield impact and more for what it reveals about wartime thinking. Once a war becomes total, the line between engineering and nightmare gets thin fast. Then we have the limpet mine, one of the few weird-looking sabotage tools here that was genuinely practical and successful. A limpet mine is a magnetic explosive charge placed manually on ships or metal infrastructure, often with a time delay. In the lineup, this is a special operations sabotage weapon. It handled one task extremely well: covert damage to ships in harbor. Unlike flashy inventions, this one worked because it matched real operator needs: portable, attachable, delayed detonation, and suited to stealth raids. British commandos used limpet mines effectively, including in Operation Frankton against shipping in Bordeaux. The trade-off was not technical so much as human. The device worked, but the mission was unbelievably dangerous for the men carrying it. Last, a legacy line example, not a single weapon, but the broader category these all belong to. Desperation weapons. Some were anti-tank fixes, some were sabotage tools, some were strategic terror concepts, and some were guidance experiments. The common misunderstanding is that weird means useless. That's not true. Some were useless, some were almost brilliant. Some worked but were morally horrific. And some were canceled because a better technology arrived first. The real pattern is this: every weird Wii weapon was trying to solve a normal military problem. Breaching walls, stopping tanks, guiding bombs, burning cities, sinking ships, but under abnormal pressure. That pressure is what made the solutions look so strange. Subscribe for further such topics.